Parnell Air National Guard Base, Tennessee. An airman escorts me to the office of the squadron commander, Colonel Christina Eliopolis. As much a legend for her temper as for her outstanding war record, it is difficult to see how so much intensity can be compacted into her diminutive, almost childlike frame. Her long black bangs and delicate facial features only reinforce the picture of eternal youth. Then she removes her sunglasses, and I see the fire behind her eyes.
I was a Raptor driver, the FA-22. It was hands down the best air superiority platform ever built. It could outfly and outfight God and all his angels. It was a monument to American technical prowess. And in this war, that prowess counted for shit.
That must have been frustrating.
Frustrating. Do you know what it feels like to suddenly be told that the one goal you've worked toward your whole life, that you've sacrificed and suffered for, that's pushed you beyond limits you never knew you had, is now considered strategically invalid?
Would you say this was a common feeling?
Let me put it this way. The Russian army wasn't the only service to be decimated by their own government. The Armed Forces Reconstruction Act basically neutered the Air Force. Some distress experts had determined that our resource-to-kill ratio, our RKR, was the most lopsided of all the branches.
Could you give me some example?
How about the JSOW, the Joint Standoff Weapon? It was a gravity bomb guided by GPS and inertial nav that could be released from as far as 40 miles away. The baseline version carried 140 Blue 97B submunitions, and each bomblet carried a shaped charge against armored targets, a fragmented case against infantry, and a zirconium ring to set the entire kill zone ablaze. It had been considered a triumph, an unparalleled war winner, until Yonkers. Now we were told that the price of one JSOW kit, the materials, manpower, time, and energy, not to mention the fuel and ground maintenance needed for the delivery of aircraft, could pay for a platoon of infantry pukes who could smoke 1,000 times as many Gs. Not enough bang for our buck, like so many of our former crown jewels. They went through us like an industrial laser. The B-2 Spirit's gone. B-1 Lancers gone. Even the old buffs, the B-52 big ugly fat fellows, gone. Throw in the Eagles, the Falcons, the Tomcats, Hornets, JSFs, and Raptors, and you have more combat aircraft lost to the stroke of a pen than to all the SAMs, Flak, and enemy fighters in history. At least the assets weren't scrapped, thank God. Just mothballed in warehouses or that big desert graveyard at Amark. Long-term investment, they called it. That's the one thing you can always depend on. As we're fighting one war, we're always preparing for the next one. Our airlift capacity, at least the organization, was almost left intact.
Almost?
The Globemasters had to go. So did anything else powered by a gas-guzzling jet. That left us with prop-powered aircraft. I went from flying the closest thing to an X-Wing fighter to the next best thing to a U-Haul.
Was that the main mission of the Air Force?
Airborne resupply was our primary objective, the only one that really counted anymore.
She points to a yellowed map on the wall.
The base commander let me keep it after what happened to me.
The map is of the wartime continental United States. All land west of the Rockies is shadowed in light gray. Amongst this gray are a variety of colored circles.
Islands in the Sea of Zack. Green denotes active military facilities. Some of them had been converted into refugee centers. Some were still contributing to the war effort. Some were well defended but had no strategic impact. The red zones were labeled offensively viable: factories, mines, power plants. The Army'd left custodial teams during the big pullback. Their job was to guard and maintain these facilities for a time when, if, we could add them to the overall war effort. The blue zones were civilian areas where people had managed to make a stand, carve out a little piece of real estate, and figure some way to live within its boundaries. All these zones were in need of resupply, and that's what the Continental Airlift was all about. It was a massive operation, not just in terms of aircraft and fuel, but organization as well. Remaining in contact with all these islands, processing their demands, coordinating with distress. Then trying to procure and prioritize all the materiel for each drop made it the statistically largest undertaking in Air Force history. We tried to stay away from consumables, things like food and medicine that required regular deliveries. These were classified as DDs, dependency drops, and they got a backseat to SSDs, self-sustaining drops like tools, spare parts, and tools to make spare parts. They don't need fish, Sinclair used to say. They need fishing poles. Still, every autumn we dropped a lot of fish and wheat and salt and dried vegetables and baby formula. Winters were hard. Remember how long they used to be? Helping people to help themselves is great in theory, but you still gotta keep them alive. Sometimes you had to drop in people, specialists like doctors or engineers, people with the kind of training you just can't get from a how-to manual. The Blue Zone's got a lot of Special Forces instructors, not only to teach them how better to defend themselves, but to prepare them for the day they might have to go on the offensive. I have a lot of respect for those guys. Most of them knew it was for the duration. A lot of the Blue Zones didn't have airstrips, so they had to parachute in without any hope of pickup. Not all those Blue Zones remained secure. Some were eventually overrun. The people we dropped in knew the risks they were taking. A lot of heart, all of them.
That goes for the pilots as well.
Hey, I'm not minimizing our risks at all. Every day we had to fly over hundreds, in some cases thousands of miles of infested territory. That's why we had purple zones.
She refers to the last color on the map. The purple circles are few and far between.
We set these up as refuel and repair facilities. A lot of the aircraft didn't have the range to reach remote drop zones on the East Coast if in-flight refueling assets weren't available. They helped reduce the number of ships and crews lost en route. They brought our fleet survivability up to 92%. Unfortunately, I was part of the other 8. I'll never be sure what exactly brought us down. Mechanical malfunction or metal fatigue combined with weather. We were on a hop from Phoenix to the Blue Zone outside Tallahassee, Florida. It was late October, almost full winter back then. Honolulu was trying to squeeze out just a few more drops before the weather socked us in till March. It was our 9th haul that week. We were all on tweaks, these little blue stims that kept you going without hampering your reflexes or judgment. I guess they worked well enough, but they made me have to piss my kidneys out every 20 minutes. My crew, the guys, used to give me a lot of grief, you know. Girls always having to go. I know they weren't really putting the hate on, but I still tried to hold it as long as I could. After 2 hours of banging around in some seriously heavy turbulence, I finally broke down and turned the stick over to my co-pilot. I just zipped up when suddenly there was this massive jolt like God had just drop-kicked our tail, and suddenly our nose was dipping. The head on our C-130 wasn't even really a toilet, just a portable chem pot with a heavy plastic shower curtain. That's probably what ended up saving my life. If I'd been trapped in a real compartment, maybe knocked out or unable to reach the latch. Suddenly, there was this screech, this overpowering blast of high-pressure air, and I was sucked out right through the rear of the aircraft, right past where the tail should have been.